are you considering moving to Marbella and the Costa del Sol, but you don't know about the school system here? Well, you're in the right place. I'm Chris Cassidy, this is the NuSun Network, and I'm here today with the Director of Calpe School in Marbella, Jacey. So Jacey, tell me about what it is, who you are and what it is you do in Calpe School.
So I'm the owner of the school.
Okay.
And I'm the director of the school. My father founded the school in 1973. Wow. And I took it over in 2002.
Okay.
And I've been running it ever since. So that's what I do, that's who I am, just somebody who's obsessed about education, I guess.
And can you, in terms of the education, can you tell me about the education system in the Costa del Sol?
So the Costa del Sol education has really improved significantly over the times. As population has increased, it's allowed more schools to grow. And you've got basically three types of schools on the coast. You've got your Spanish schools, state and private schools, which follow the Spanish educational system completely. You've got your bilingual schools, which are predominantly Spanish, but they'll do some lessons in English, or maths or history, geography in English. And then you've got what we are in, which is British schools, and they're classified within the system as pure schools. So basically they follow the British national curriculum. We get inspected by the British government on a regular basis every 4 years, okay, just like you would in the UK. So you get your Ofsted certificate. It's not Ofsted that inspects us. It's NABS or NIS, NABS Inspection Service. And they basically do exactly the same as they would in the UK. So they'll come do observations, they'll come and have a look at your facilities, and they'll track to see how are you teaching the children. And the consideration is as a British school. It's not are you a British school in Spain. Yeah. It is very much, you're an English school, you have to have English staff. There are a little bit of leeway as far as assistance is concerned, but predominantly you are judged with your peers back in the UK.
For example, I've got a 6-year-old boy and there's loads of people out there with young kids. What is the process? What do they need to do if they're abroad to get their kids into school over here?
So it's quite simple. First, you need to decide what type of school you're looking for. Yeah. What are your expectations? Schools are very different. They vary significantly in their approaches to education, in their approaches of the way the fee structures work. So if we'll focus on the international schools. So the international schools, the great thing about the British educational system is that it allows schools a lot of independence to make decisions. So basically it gives you the curriculum, it says this is the curriculum, this is what we recommend as good practice, but you as a school and as teachers know your children better than anybody else, and they leave it up to you to kind of target it, to make sure that the children learn what they need to learn.
Yeah.
So within that means that schools have big approach differences, and the head of the school can have a big influence on that. So in the Costa del Sol, I believe there's around 10 British schools between Estepona and Malaga. Yep. And they're all very, very different. Whereas opposed to the Spanish system, there might be the equivalent, the same number, but they'll be quite similar because the Spanish education system is quite rigid. There isn't much flexibility allowed there. They target very much to the center. Mm. So if you are looking to come out to Spain, my recommendation would be to look at all the schools, get a feel of what it is that your son, daughter's like. So some children are introverted, some children are extroverted. Some schools are very focused on academia. Some schools are focusing on the complete child. And I think you've got to really find the school that suits your child's needs best. The international schools here, because there's quite a few of them, the standards are quite high. I mean, it does vary, but the approach is similar, and we get inspected by the same inspection authorities. So most of the British schools have an evaluation process. So you'll have to take your report from your previous school, say that you're interested in enrolling your son, daughter in the school, and then they will do an assessment or a trial morning, depending what it is and depending on the age. And then they'll accept you, not accept you, but very similar to the UK in that way. Because we are in Spain, the price of education is relatively much cheaper than it is back in the UK. So for the equivalent, so if you're looking at, say, a 3-year-old, you're looking at about €800 a month. if you're looking and say 16, 17, 18-year-olds, you're looking at about 1,200, 1,300, maybe slightly more and slightly less. But those are the ballpark figures that you're looking at, opposed to the UK, which is practically double that.
Yeah, big difference.
It's a big difference. Within the coast, there's also big schools, small schools. So our school is a relatively small school. We've got 160 children enrolled.
Okay.
We are only from primary, so we go from 3 to 11. So we focus on primary. Most of the schools on the coast go from 3 to 18, even though the curriculum is broken up into 3 chunks. So you've got your EYFS, which is your early years from 0 to 5. You've got primary, which is Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2 to 11 years old. And then you've got from 11 up to 18. And the curriculums are quite different. So they'll be on the same campus, but they'll be, say, effectively 3 different schools on one piece of land. So children want to feel safe at schools. And they want to settle in, particularly if they've come to a foreign country. So as our school, we've only got a 1-year entry class. We enable that quite quickly. We make sure that we're the only school that has assistants in every class. We have a lot of support around there. And when there's 150, 160 children, it still allows that family feel where everybody gets to know everybody, but it's still competitive enough so everybody feels that they've got to do their best and there's a bit of peer pressure. So when you're going up to schools, the other schools on the coast, the smallest one I think has got 500 children enrolled, and some have got up to about 1,200 children enrolled. They really become big institutions. I feel that as a human being, you're more capable to do better in a big institution once you're past 11 years old. You know, with all the will in the world, a school, if they put loads of stuff, you're just one of many. You're not going to remember you. And you can't instill a good work ethic in somebody 5, 6, 7 years old without them feeling safe. And if you don't do the foundations well in early years, it's much harder to correct it later on. My philosophy is very much focused on the positive. So I've had children come into the school that have had attitude problems, they're angry with whatever the case may be. But I've yet to meet a child that didn't want to do well at school. So the secret, or what I feel is the secret for success, is to make children feel it's okay to say I don't know, to make it say I need help, and then to set clear, attainable targets. So within our system, again, I told you the British government allows you to have lots of independence within the school. We really take advantage of that to have big difference in levels. So we might have in a particular class children reading on stage 4 and some children reading on stage 12 or 13. And there is no judgment placed. It's basically, that's my level, and the children support each other. So if you allow that freedom where a child is actively feels comfortable with the stage that they're at and says, okay, well, your expectation is to move up 2 stages in an academic year, no matter if you're on stage 4 or stage 11, that then instills a sense of confidence and a can-do attitude. But if you got somebody on stage 4, stage 5, and you expect them to be on stage 12, that realistically is unattainable unless something extreme has happened. And what you find is if you do allow that, behavior improves significantly, social skills improve significantly, and it creates a much more supportive environment within the school. So that's the way we mold our school at Calpe. I can only really talk, I've been to other schools and observed a little bit, but that's the way that I do it. And I've been in the education system my whole life. My father founded the school before I was born. And I didn't particularly enjoy school. Which people might find difficult to understand.
Hands up to that.
And I think that if you come from that perspective, you're going to have a lot more empathy and understanding. So I wanted to do well at school. I was determined to do well at school, but it was hard for me. And I had friends of mine that it was really easy. And what I've found in my experience of teaching and being around teachers all the time is that most people that are in the academic industry find school easy. So they find it very difficult to really get into the mindset of a child who struggles academically. So my job as a director is to support staff in that also to create an environment where the children are supported. So that's why we have so many more assistants than the other school is, because there is opportunities for children to have time by themselves, small groups, and class time. If not, what happens is that the children get lost, because the teachers have got to keep a certain pace. They've got their objectives. I've got to cover this curriculum in 10 months. I've got to achieve this. And if you get left behind, it's very difficult for them if they don't have the support to bring you along. So going back to your original question about schools on the Costa del Sol, I think depending on what your child's needs are, I think you should look at the schools. And remember that I think one of the things that I would strongly recommend is remember that you're the customer and you're paying for a service.
Yeah.
And don't just say, oh, it's a school, it's an institution, that I'll just follow them blind. Definitely don't. Ask the pertinent questions, walk through it and say to yourselves, would I feel comfortable in this environment? Is this the sort of child that my child would feel comfortable in this environment? If I had to ask questions of the teacher for X, Y, Z, homework, reading levels, do I feel that this school is going to support my child's needs? And are they going to enable them to be successful moving further forward? As a primary school, I know all my children are going to have an entrance exam when they leave. So I'm always going to make sure that I get the very best out of my children.
Yeah.
And basically, children are like flowers. The more you put in, the more they grow. I really enjoy being around children, and I think I'm in a privileged position where the Costa del Sol now has so many foreign families that it allows schools to have international culture, has enough children for them to have all the resources they require, and children go seamlessly from here to schools back in the UK, schools in Switzerland, to other international schools. We've had a lot of families leave us, go to Dubai, go to New York, go to Monaco. I don't think there's one country that that haven't received children from, or that children from our school haven't gone to. There is a real network of international schools.
Yeah. So that whole transition potentially once they finish isn't too daunting, depending on if they go anywhere. They're that used to mixing with a whole mixture of people that it's not daunting at all.
I think what you've hit the nail on the head there, but it's important that the children feel safe.
Of course.
And I think I'll give you an example. I've had some children who have amazing intelligence, photographic memories, but they really struggle to make friends, or they really struggle at sports. And I've had those parents come into me. My child's at the top level of this X, Y, Z in literacy or in numeracy. I want them to give them more maths work, for example. And I tell to the parents, you know what, your son is good at maths.
Yeah.
Well, he's just good at maths. We've got to focus on the complete child. You need your child to be better at sports. You need to make sure that he's better at making friends, better at dealing with confrontation. It's my turn, no, it's your turn. Those are all the extra things that children have to learn at school, which people forget about. And when we had COVID, it was really difficult for schools. And I think what really clarified for me in my brain was the enabling environment. That's one of the key phrases in one of the curriculums for the early children. Is like, how enabling is the environment? So a gym is enabling for you to work out because there's machines, there's other people working out there. And a school should be an enabling environment. So when a child goes to the school, everything should be there, making the child want to learn and supportive. And I think if you create an environment where the child feels enabled, those transitions will grow. Because at the end of the day, what do any parent want for their child? They want them to be confident and love themselves.
Yeah.
And if they do love themselves, the school plays a huge part in that, not the only part. But if it's safe to say, I don't know, if it's safe to say, I can do this, it's safe to say, I can progress, I know I'm able of doing things, that creates a different mindset to, I'm just one of 1,000.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as well it's important for parents, because if they are moving over here from abroad, that's a big enough challenge, and that can be quite a massive change for their kids. So making the transition into a new school is really important to get that right first time, just to try and get remove some of the burden that might be on them. The whole change has been massive for them. We don't want to make them even more upset in transitioning into a new school. So I think what you're saying there is get that visibility of what your child is like as a person, what type of school they might be better suited at. As you say, whether, you know, if they're maybe sort of more internalised or they're very extroverted and everything else. It's look at the school, look at your child and see what you think they might flourish in, and maybe take that into consideration, just because you don't want to impact them, right? You don't want to mess with their heads anymore
totally
at a young
agree.
age.
And that's why it's important that when the parents do look at schools, you know, you're going to have a lot going on in your life. You've moved to a new country. You want to have a school that's going to make you feel that you can relax and know that your child's in a safe place and that they're taking care of what they need to take care of with the children so that you can get on with your business. And you also need to find a school that when you do call reception, hopefully they know who you are, they know where your child is, and if he's, you know, he's got chicken pox or he's got, you know, an upset stomach or he's forgotten his homework, that you have that communication. A successful education is basically a three-legged stool. It's the parents, the child, and the school. And we rely on all of those for it to be successful. And hopefully, many people do move out here. That's why the Costa del Sol is as big as it is, because the schools do their part. And I would say that's one of the things that does make the Costa del Sol unique, opposed to other areas in Spain where there isn't the international schools.
So Jacey, you told us a lot about, you know, what parents should be looking for in a school, but some people might be interested to know, I would as well, is about what about the more processy side of it, the logistics. You know, for example, right, if I've got a kid in primary school in the UK, what do I need to do to sort of get them over to, if, for example, Calpe School or any other school? There must be stuff I need to do. Do I need to get things checked and handed over to you? Is there a certain time of the year that we need to do, inductions? I don't know where to start.
Okay, so the way that it normally happens for families that are abroad is they'll do some research online. So most schools will have their websites, they'll have their Google reviews, they'll have videos on YouTube, an Instagram account. So we've got all of that. We've got an Instagram account, YouTube channel, a website. And most of the websites will have a need more information. So normally it will either be a phone call or send an email in, and which will go straight to admissions. My recommendation is always put in the email the age of your children, so the actual date of birth, and when you hope to start, and contact details. And then what will happen is the school should then contact you back, and they'll say to you, okay, well, we have places, we don't have places, or they'll set up an interview for you online, or if you fly out. And then what you'll need, if you are interested in the school, you'll fill in an application form. So the application form will have more personal details of yours and your children's. And then the application process starts. So then we'll need reports of your children. So let's say your son, I don't know, 9 years old. So he'll have a report from September or in December. You send that through, basically so that the school has an idea of what the academic level of your child is. Once they've done that, what will normally happen is that you should ideally come out and see the school. So maybe some people will come out for a week and view all the schools, look at houses at the same time, locations, and you'll have all your appointments set up. And then from that process, the school should then be able to give you a big indicator of what your next step is. The normal process is to apply between January and March for September.
Right,
Okay. But this being the Costa del Sol, you can apply anytime. Okay, there is no school that is not going to look at admissions. We are all privately funded, so we all have to pay our bills.
Of course. So
if there is a space, schools are going to be keen to fill it. What I would say is going back to a point I raised in the previous questions. Remember that you are the customer. If a school is bullying you or calling you overzealously, please take the place. If you don't take it, somebody else will offer it to somebody else. I would always be suspicious of that. You know, make the decision when you're good and ready. Make sure that it's the school that you want, and you set the tone. Okay, once you've applied to the schools will have internal regulations. Most of the schools have uniforms. You know, make sure you get your child to school on time and make sure that you are a good parent. But think of it like when you buy a car. If you've gone to see, I don't know, say a Mercedes, a BMW, and Audi, and let's say they're all similar, and the BMW salesman keeps calling you to buy the BMW, it's because he's got to hit his numbers.
Yeah.
You know, but you choose the right school for you, and then say, and you know, there might be a waiting list, there might not be a waiting list, but if you are committed to a particular school and you go and show a commitment to that school, a school is always going to be keen to have a family that feels that that's the right school that fits them.
Yeah.
You know, they're always looking for good relationships. What I have seen in the past is, for example, some children haven't had particularly enough English. Maybe if they've come from, I don't know, Scandinavia or Germany, and the schools will say, well, we need you to learn more English. But they will tell you at the beginning, and most schools, our school included, has an EAL program included. So it'll be an additional cost and say, okay, your child will go into the correct class, but they will need additional extra English lessons, which will happen in the school itself.
Okay.
So it's relatively easy at the beginning, and then the more committed you are, the more paperwork you've got to fill in. And there's a lot to do with data protection in Spain, so there's lots of forms to fill in. There'll be, you know, you've got to prove that you're the parents of the children to make sure that you have custody. So there's the application side for the academic side, and then there's the legal side to make sure that you are the appropriate, the custodian person to say that you can enroll that child in the school.
Got you. And you also mentioned about, just for example, just going on, you mentioned about Scandinavian countries.
Yes.
How would that, I'm thinking about, you know, not just people from the UK, but people from different education systems.
Yes.
Trying to then integrate into a British system.
Right.
Where would they even start in that?
So normally what you find is that we're an international school, so we're used to international settings. I've got children from Mongolia, Russia, Ukraine, Germany, China, United States. There is always going to be an induction process.
Yeah.
Okay. But generally speaking, the academic systems are similar. You know, there is going to be history, there is going to be art, there is going to be handwriting, there is going to be certain things, particularly in primary. So in primary, the problems are far less. Now, if your child is 13, 14, 15, 16, that's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
But in the primary, it's quite easy. And again, just like we've got the EAL program, we've got additional support programs. So if we feel that particular child is missing out in this area or that area, we've got extra support. So that's one of the main reasons why we have so many support staff, so that we can kind of fill in the gaps that we find. Because ultimately, when the children leave our school at 11 years old, I want to make sure that there are no gaps and that they're able to go to really any school. And parents, so we have some Spanish families in our school that really like the British educational system.
Yeah.
But they eventually want their children to go to Spanish university. So they'll leave at 11, but they'll tell us, our child is going to go to a Spanish school when they leave primary to go secondary there. So then we'll make an extra emphasis on making sure that their Spanish level is at a particular level, because we know what the expectations are of the schools.
Yeah.
We have a very good relationship with all the schools on the coast. So the heads will talk and they'll say, well, we want X or we want Y. Because ultimately my job is to make sure that the children get into the most appropriate school for them in secondary. And within secondary schools, it's very different, because you've got GCSEs, you've got IB, you've got A levels, you've got bilingual schools. So once you pass 12, I would say that the strain on the child gets slightly harder.
Okay.
And just to be aware of that. So try and stick with the same system. Yeah. Most people, the English system is particularly flexible and does help, but once the children are in secondary, try and move your children as little as possible, is my recommendation.
Okay. So if they're in a British school, put them in, try and get them to a British school. If they're more of a Spanish type, and there is international schools that you mentioned, bilingual schools.
Yes, bilingual schools. There's also there's 2 or 3 Swedish schools on the coast.
Yeah.
There's bilingual schools. There's an American school. There's lots of schools, and they will all have different needs. And again, once you're going higher up the age group, all schools look for prestige.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
So my prestige is my 11-year-olds, that we do well at sports and that we focus and that they get into their first choice school. So I've had children get into really difficult boarding schools to get into the UK. So A lot of our energy goes into primary.
Yeah.
Because we only go up to primary. What you'll find in these big schools, should be 500 children plus because they go all the way through, is their focus is going to be on university entry. So our children got to X university or Y university. Some of the schools don't have that emphasis, but basing it on myself, someone who didn't find school as easy as maybe other people did, I think if you choose a very academic school, make sure that your child is very academic.
Yeah.
Because the schools are looking always at their Google score, let's put it in inverted commas, their scores as far as the education board. So we had so many A stars or we had so many A level passes. So if your child is within that bracket, that's fine. But if your child's not, that should be a red flag to you. You don't want your child to feel under tremendous pressure. And you want to go for a school which is maybe more supportive of their needs and say, okay, we're going to get more out of you as an individual. So those would be my areas of expertise. I know I've diverted off your question about what it is that you're looking for, but as parents, hopefully you know your children. Remember that the school is there to serve you, that you pay for a service, but you still have to fit within the criteria. The school is very much looking after a group of children, not one child.
Yeah.
So they can't just go to, a bespoke program for you. But within that, you still have to make sure that your child's needs are met.
So Jacey, you've obviously got kids that you work with regularly, and it seems like you're really proud to do what you're doing. But what makes you motivate kids to learn?
I really find working with children a privilege.
Yeah.
I think it's a real privilege. I feel it's a privilege first, foremost, that parents would entrust us to look after their children, and then that children come into our school and feel that this is their second home. So our school motto is happy to learn. So I can't make anybody learn anything, okay? So if I want you to learn something, if you're stressed, if you're angry, you're not going to learn very much, are you? Your mind is going to be quite closed. So happy to learn means feeling safe, first and foremost, feeling that we're there to help you, and then making sure that the children understand that it is their job to come to school to learn.
Yeah.
When you deal with all children's personalities and all children's backgrounds like you do in international school, you're dealing with children that have either been very mollycoddled, an only child, and whenever they say something, their opinion goes first. You've got some parents who work all the time and don't spend any time with their children. You've got the child who's angry because they just have left their friends abroad, or there's tons of myriad of scenarios. But if children, once they feel safe and they appreciate that you're there to help them, they relax. And then once children, just like I said, like flowers, if you give them attention, so what the focus should be is positive attention.
Yeah.
So what does positive attention look like? So let's say I go into the classroom and I've got children, I've left the children alone. I come back and I see the children, and some children are misbehaving. So there's two ways I can address that. There's a standard way. Oh my goodness, I'm so disappointed. Charles, why are you messing around? I can't leave you alone for 2 seconds,
Yeah.
okay? Or I can go, and what have I done there? I fed the negative.
Yeah.
So I could go in there and see that Mark's sitting at the table just like I asked him to, and I say, well done, Mark. I know I can always trust you to do the right thing. So what have I done? I've put the attention on the child that's doing the appropriate behavior, recognized him. The other children will look at Mark and say, well, that's what I need to do. And they will do that. So in our language is so powerful, and what we say is so powerful. So focus, my takeaway point is focus on the do activities.
Yeah.
So what do I want the children to do? I want the children to sit down. So say, please sit down. I want the children to keep quiet. Please keep quiet. Don't say, why are you shouting? You understand? The subconscious brain can't process it. So you've got to give very clear instructions of what it is that you want. Once you know once the children have come into the school, you want to make sure that you know what their levels are. So let's say you're on stage 4, like I said to you. You say to that child, that's okay, you're on stage 4. We're going to see to stage 5 and we're going to support you. Then what happens is that children want to be successful, or everybody wants to be successful. But if they set you a target which is attainable and you can be successful, and then when they reach stage 5, I will give them a lot of attention. I say, I'm so proud of you. You know what, you've reached stage 5. I know that's difficult for you. You know, well done. We can do more. So we give a lot of recognition in our school. We give lots of stickers, we give lots of house points, and it's feed the behavior that we're looking for. So with this size school that we have at Calpe, the behavior is good, the learning is good, and the children are accountable. So, for example, like you said, you weren't good at school, I wasn't good at school. If the teacher didn't mark the homework, I want to do the homework.
Yeah.
So we make sure the homework gets marked, we make sure the reading gets done, so that there is always the accountability. So as a director, I can't see every single child every day in my office. But I do give special attention to the children which I feel could do better.
Yeah.
So I will, when they come into my office, on the occasions that they have to come in, I will always say to them, I know that you can do better than this. So whatever's happened, I always say, I know that you can do better.
Yeah.
And I know, and I say, the next time you come into my office, I want to say, well done, opposed to, I know you can do better. And if you have those kind of conversations with children, they will step up to the challenge.
Yeah.
As a small school, I'm at the front door all the time. I know all my children, I know all my parents. And if what you call is a wow moment, and a wow moment can be anything, holding a pencil properly, speaking in public, having a great PE lesson, whatever the challenge is for that child, if they overcome that, it becomes a wow moment. I make a personal point of speaking to those parents and saying, your child achieved this, achieved that, because that makes that child 6 foot tall in front of their parents. You know, it's like they recognize what I did, and then they're more likely to get in those positive behaviors. And at the end, my focus more than anything is self-esteem and something called grit. Yeah. And if you've got grit, you'll achieve things in life. If you're this extremely clever child but have very low self-esteem, the first wave in life will hit you and you'll give up.
Yeah.
And that's not what we want for anybody. We want someone to pick themselves back up again and move forward. Bad things will happen in life, and we've got to give the children the tools to be successful.
Of course.
And that is ultimately a school's job. You know, we've got to follow the British national curriculum, and we've got to make sure the children do instill themselves discipline and accountability for their work, and make sure that they progress through the system. But ultimately, higher than that is that child has grit, and that process of learning and that process of struggling and being successful, and struggling and being successful instills in them a self-worth that when they do go out and find a job, they have that within themselves.
And just on that, right, so I mean, you mentioned about some of the things that you do in your school. Mm-hmm. So what separates Calpe School from the rest of them?
So what sets us apart is our size. At 150 children, we're one of the smaller schools on the coast. We have a 1-year intake. It's an independent school. So we're not dependent on shareholders or other kinds of pressures. The school's been going on for many, many years, 50 years now. We're celebrating our 51st anniversary in September.
Wow.
So that gives us a lot of opportunities to really focus on the child. We don't have external pressures. And because the head of a school has a huge impact, like in any industry. Because I'm so passionate about education and I'm so passionate about making sure children do well, I feel that filters down to the staff. Yeah. And the staff then filters that down to the children. And for me, what makes a good day is I might have a 30-year-old person say, please look after my son, my daughter. I had a great time when I was at school with your father, or I had a great time when you were at school, and I want to carry on that momentum. And I think that legacy and that consistency of being a family-run business and being a human approach sets us apart from other schools where their heads change X amount of years, or they've got shareholders they've got to be accountable for, or they've got other issues that they deal with. So yes, it's a nice place to be. You know, I spend many, many hours there, and I want it to be a nice place for children, for myself, and for my staff.
Fantastic. Jacey, thank you for coming along. I've learned so much about the school system here, and I'm sure our audience and the listeners and our viewers would have learnt so much as well. So all I can say is thank you for coming along, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I've enjoyed the experience.
Awesome, you're welcome.